oldest time. So, good morning, everyone. Because it's morning where I come from, it's 10:30 my time, and I've been up since 4. So, welcome to coming east from Los Angeles. So, today I'm representing GiE. It's out in west Los Angeles. And as I said before, my name's Joe Wise. I've got 38 years of experience. I know it looks like I'm 30, but 38 years of experience in the classroom. My first example of gaming happened in '73. I brought in my Army men. We had squares on the floor, and we used an inclined plane and a dart gun. And we had a teleprompter that was connected to a Hewlett-Packard 2000 down in Dayton, Ohio, that went over the phone line, and it typed 60 characters per minute. And this was high tech. Okay, we were one of the few schools that had this kind of technology. And so we had walkie-talkies, and the kids would count how many squares up and how many squares over they wanted to hit. They would radio that into the radio person that was on the computer. They would type it into the teletype. A minute and a half later, the answer would come back as to what angle they needed to shoot the gun, and that was gameplay. And it was really great. The kids loved it. I loved it. I probably loved it more than they did. But anyway, I thought that we had arrived with that teletype. And then 15 years ago, I had 21 T1 lines coming into my school. We were streaming 30 frames per second over analog lines. We had shared computer screens with light dims that the kids played tic-tac-toe with. And I thought we had arrived. But I'm here to tell you that now I think we really have arrived. And so after 38 years, I think we are starting to see reform in school. We're starting to see the technology starting to really invade what it is that we do in really meaningful ways. The first thing I think we have to do when we're looking at schools' education is, what is education? Why do we go to school? What is it that we're doing? It used to be clear. When I started out in '73, I remember sitting in my little room the night before my first day of class. I planned out all my lessons. I taught 5 classes, 4 different subjects. I had it all set out. I went through the day. At the end of the day, I was sitting in my chair. I was exhausted. That's when I realized I had to do it again the next day. And so, but education at that time was simple. Basically, I taught what was in the book. I asked the kids to reply back to me what I had asked them to know. They did, etc., etc. Nowadays, education is much more complex. We believe that it's a mental model of the world. You're basically creating a mental model of the world. My daughter just recently gave birth to my first grandchild. I know I still look 30. Gave birth to my first grandchild, and she is experiencing this first time on him. There is no time that she was taught how to be a mother. She is taking all of her resources, all of the things that she's learned from life, from school, from our parenting, my wife and I's parenting, and she is creating a model, using those models to create meaning for her that allows her to effectively engage in this child raising. So in this learning, basically we have portals that we utilize. These portals, this is kind of my father's generation. You had travel, you had books, you had school, parents, community, the town, newspapers, and so forth. That was how you created this model. And now, this is more of my age. I can remember getting our first TV when I was 6. There was one channel to watch. You also had travel. Well, I can remember, too, when Pong came out. My parents were like, why are you doing this mindless game? But it was a lot of fun, just trying to get the ball to go back and forth. You guys all remember that, I'm hoping. All right, and so, and now this is more like my children's access to portals. And you can see that all of a sudden, there are a lot more portal opportunities for these students, for our children, to create meaning in this world that we're living in. These are some of the 21st century skills that the students are going to need. Because in this new world that's emerging, students are no longer just consumers. They're in fact producers of information. With these new tools that are emerging, students can in fact produce applications. We had a student who produced an application with a partner in Europe. He was in the 7th grade. Created an iPhone app that they then sold, and I think they made a couple of bucks. Who knows? But it was pretty exciting for us and for the student. So these new 21st century skills are going to require that we have some way of getting these skills to the students. And currently, when we look at it, our current schools aren't really set up to deal with those 21st century skills. I don't know how many of your schools look like this. I'm assuming because you're here that they don't, because you guys are doing really neat and exciting things, right? Okay, so Game Desk, through the help of AT&T, with this really big grant, is working on developing a portal and a hub that interfaces between these educational entities, be it school, museums, or whatever, community places for learning and education to take place. Game Desk is working to create a portal, a national portal, and a hub, and we're also putting together a Playmaker school that will vet these different things that are coming up out of different companies that are creating games. Game Desk itself is creating games. And so it looks something like this. I forgot my laser pointer, but if you look at that big, tall building, that's the hub. That's the physical situation in Los Angeles that AT&T is funding. And then to the left, you'll see the Playmaker School, which we're creating. And then over to the right, you can see that other schools, buses, kids, parents with their kids, and so forth, are coming to the hub to play games, to be involved in play space, to learn. And from that, we're going to be creating videotapes, educational research on how the kids respond to these games and so forth. That information is going to go into improving these games and improving what goes out of the portal. Some of these things will be going into the school, and they'll be tested, field tested there in the school. Some of the things will be created in the school, will be going into the hub. And so this whole network is set up to address this issue so that we're going to be generating and creating playful space. And so this is our goal, that we would then have playmaking space. Kids are making, kids are playing. We're able to do this with this triangle where we're bringing in academia. So we have people from USC, we have people from K through 12, we also have people from industry, AT&T, and other game companies that are interested in partnering with us. And we're looking to take this trifecta, these three things, put them together to create this model that then integrates the playmaking into the schools and allows us to distribute this widely. That then creates this online portal that you, in your New York school districts, will be able to come to that portal. You'll be able to look at vetted materials. You'll be able to look at how they were integrated into. You can see videos of teachers doing it, all of that kind of thing, which then allows you to implement that into your classroom. And as you implement it into your classroom, you'll have responses, you'll have things that happen that you can then put back up on the portal, and then we end up with this 21st century way of developing curriculum and materials for our students to learn. So these are some of the activities that Game Desk is currently involved in. Not only do we do research, we also do development. So we have some games that we've developed ourselves. We have some games that people have developed that we are then wrapping curriculum around. We work with assessment. Not only are we looking at how do we assess students, but we're also looking at how do we assess these games, these playmaking activities. We're involved in outreach. We go out to conferences, workshops, and then we also do the vetting. So for instance, if you create some kind of an app or some kind of an activity in your classroom, if you have an idea, you want it to be developed into a game, we can help you with that. We can also, if you have some game or some activity developed, we can, if it works out well, we can vet it through our hub and through our school, and then that way get feedback to you as to how well it's working and so forth. And so then we're doing the new school launch this fall in September. With the research history, I just wanted to mention that Lucian Vittel is our executive director there at Game Desk, and he is the former associate director for game research at USC. He's had 10 years of experience in developing games. Game Desk has professional production capability, so we can, if you have an idea for some kind of game, if students have an idea for a game. So for example, in our Playmaker School, we have a lab that we're working on where students and teachers can work together to work on developing curriculum. Students might have an idea for a game or an activity that they would like to do. They can bring it to the table, and if it works out, they can then become part of the production team to bring this game or this activity into production and get it up on the portal. So a lot of what we do at Game Desk has to do with dealing with some of the difficult concepts. So I noticed there were a couple of science teachers, a lot of elementary school teachers. This happens to be a physics problem that students have a lot of trouble with. What we do is we look at how can we take that situation. There are a lot of misconceptions around it. How can we put the student into motion play so that there are kinesthetically things that they can attach to? And so, for instance, up in the upper left-hand corner, this is a student using what's called small lab. This is a projection system that projects down onto the floor. And the students here are trying to walk at a constant velocity, and the students around are giving them feedback and input and so forth. So you can see that the students are getting immediate formative feedback, and they are also then participatory. So they're immersed in this activity. Over here on the lower right, you'll see that we have a young lady who is flying like an albatross. And so we have a game that we've created in which the kids are in fact the albatross. And quite a few interesting concepts such as vectors, force, and those kinds of things can be developed that way. So when we look at the motion play, we've done research on this. And you can see that in this particular case, the students are doing a chemistry titration. And so the kids here are trying to neutralize an acid or base by playing this game on the floor. The other kids are looking and watching. And you can see from the mean score that the blue is when the small lab or the motion play was done first, and then the traditional, regular class second. And then you can see in the red where the regular was done first and the small lab, the motion play was done second. And so we're able to show experimentally that this motion lab, this immersive play, is in fact having a key impact on the students' learning. This is a second one that we did having to do with earth science. And has everybody here heard the phrase, if you really want to learn something, you should teach it? Is that familiar to everybody? There's something really wrong with that, right? I mean, we need to find ways of getting the students to do what the teachers are doing if teaching is how you learn so well. Okay? So we looked at what are some of the things that teachers are doing that we can get students to do. And sure enough, in this motion play, notice here on the left, that's regular instruction. So you see student to student is the red, very little student to student interaction. There is quite a bit of student to teacher and quite a bit of teacher to student. Notice on the right when we did the small lab motion, that all of a sudden we started to get way more student to student interaction. And this is the students starting to use vocabulary, starting to develop the meaning and understanding of the concepts. Extremely important in authentic learning. This is the arrow that Game Desk has developed. This is up in the upper left. What we've done is we've created with the GiE and with Connect, we've created a set of wings, and the student can in fact rotate the wings, the left and the right wing, and fly just like an albatross. And we've embedded all sorts of learning within that. For example, gravity, a lot of times kids will say, well, gravity points down. Well, that works really well if you know what down is, because obviously in the southern hemisphere, our down is their up. And so we got the kids to change to gravity points towards the center of the earth. We were able to show the gravity vector. We were able to show lift vectors, thrust vectors. And so students came away understanding, and we did post-tests with this to demonstrate that it actually worked. The students came away recognizing that forces could be represented by arrows, and that the length would be representative of the magnitude. And so we've got evidence that shows that this really works. Here in the lower left, we created this with a group out in Los Angeles. We used Dyson fans. And the Dyson fans are around the player. And And the Dyson fans are hooked up to the computer so that as you do certain things, the fans respond. So you can actually feel the lift, the drag, and so forth. Not only just see it in the computer as a response, but actually sense the feeling. This was played at the Washington, D.C. Engineering Conference, and you can see these are some of the kids' expressions as they were playing. Another thing that Game Desk has done and is continuing to do is that we've taken students that are at risk for mathematics, low-achieving students. We've been into several schools in the LA Unified System, and we've created, using MathMaker, we've created a curriculum in which the kids create games around the mathematics. And so one of the most exciting videos that I saw of one of the students, he was so excited because he had to use the quadratic formula to get his object to jump and land on this other platform. And so this was a kid who had no real interest in mathematics, all of a sudden was using the quadratic formula and had reason and meaning for it. And so we've done experiments with this, and you can see the metrics. The red is the pre-test and the blue is the post-test. We've had 80% of the students improved in their mathematics, and this is the content. Not only was there the content, but there was also the affect. And so you can see the students' their class interest improved, their self-efficacy improved, and their math interest improved by using play and games. A lot of times play, sometimes I think we get caught up in this play in the video game, it's got to be a game, but play is an attitude. And like when we go into school, if we had that playful attitude, I had a good friend who once said, why is it that school and work, we always have to be so serious? And why can't we bring more of an attitude of playfulness? And so that's what we're working on doing, is developing curricula that allow that playfulness to come into this environment. One of the really great things about gaming that Game Desk is also making use of is the idea that gaming allows you to suspend time. And so in this game that we're developing, we're looking at the development of the solar system and of Earth. And so as you know, the development of the solar system and Earth takes a tremendous amount of time. There's no way that you can sit in a classroom and wait that long. And so by using the technology, we're able to speed through time and speed through processes and let students see what happened, what took place, interact with what happened, what took place, look at what happens if they make this change, that change, and so forth. And so we're able to, in fact, suspend the idea of time through gameplay. Another thing that we can do is we can suspend the idea of reality. So for instance, a software product that we're just now coming out with, we call ThermBot. ThermBot is all about looking at heat and temperature scales. I don't know how many of you know this, but Fahrenheit basically went into his basement, found the coolest spot he could, and called that 0. And then he made marks on a scale, and that was called the Fahrenheit scale. That's why it's so hot. Water froze at 32, water boils at 212. Nobody made that up. It just happened that his 0 was the 0. Well, as technology advanced and as the world became a smaller place, we needed a better scale that other people could also use, because not everybody could go to Fahrenheit's basement to set 0. And so Celsius came along and said, let's use freezing and boiling of water, because everybody has water. Freeze the water, call that 0. Boil the water, call that 100. Make marks in between. And so we did. Later, we've discovered that actually temperature is proportional to the amount of kinetic energy. And kinetic energy can be 0. And so it made sense for people to say, wait a minute, there is a 0 temperature. Let's call that 0, where there's no motion of the molecules. That'll be 0, and then we'll use a scale. That's called the Kelvin scale. Some of you may have heard of it, some of you may not. But ThermBot allows the students to suspend reality. They get to create their own temperature scale. Some of the temperature scales that they create are useful. Some of the temperature scales that they create are not useful at all. And so they get to be a part of that development of the temperature. And they get to call the temperature scale whatever they want to. So we get like Bob's and Mary's and Jim's instead of Celsius and Kelvin and so forth. And so not only can you suspend time, but you can suspend reality. Dojo is a game that we've just come out with that we were asked by Funder to look at how can we impact students that have a propensity for anger, emotion, that were having difficulty monitoring their emotions and so forth. And so the result of that was a program called Dojo. And in Dojo, you go into these different dojos in which you learn to manage different aspects like anger, fear, and so forth. Interesting thing about the game, you can see, you can't see very well. Right here, where it's really, really dark, can you see the hand? Can you make out the hand? Okay, and so on the fingertips of each of the hands are biometric sensors. And they sense the heart rate, they sense the amount of sweat, perspiration, and so forth. And so what this does is, as you're playing the game, if you start to get fearful or angry, it senses the change in your biometrics and starts to make the game more difficult. And so to do well at the game, you have to, in fact, reduce your heart rate. You have to, in fact, reduce your fear, and so forth. And this has been found to be successful in working with children, students that have emotional control issues. And so this is another thing that gaming can do, is that we can, in fact, look at the emotional responses and look at the affect that gameplay is having. So when we look at all of gameplay and makerspace and all of this stuff that we're talking about integrating into our classrooms and educational systems, engagement and content are clearly very, very important. But we can't stop there. We have to go on to higher order thinking. We have to get into producers and creators, innovation. Gameplay is all about innovation. Makerspace, all about innovation. Getting students to create games themselves. I put this in because I just like it. Never teach my pupils, I'm going to attempt to provide the conditions in which they can learn. And I don't know if you've read the Art of Game Design, but there's also a box set with little cards of all the different things. And so we were at Game Desk sitting around one time and we started looking through the cards, and this is one of the cards. A great game designer creates a series of meaningful experiences where a player is constantly engaged and thus compelled to consistently overcome all cognitive challenges within the game. And so a little game that we play is we take these cards and we try to reword them. So we looked at this and we said, okay, this is all about gameplay and creating good games, but if you look at it and say a great school creates a series of meaningful experiences where a student or a learner is constantly compelled to consistently overcome all cognitive challenges within his or her education. That, in fact, is a definition of a good school. And so we see that in creating good games, we're in fact creating good schools, good learning environments. So basically, Game Desk, we're in Los Angeles, California. We're working on an AT&T grant in which we're creating a hub that will be in Los Angeles. That's only the first hub. The plan is that there will be other hubs, maybe Troy, New York, Atlanta, Dallas, and some other places. And so all of these various hubs will be gathering together top people that are interested in developing play-making, game-making spaces, and we'll be looking at the results of these activities from a research point of view, and we'll also then be driving this movement toward the 21st century education through game and play. That's my presentation. I welcome any questions that anybody might have. They're going to be available later this fall. So they're just in final. Aero, we're going to be demoing Aero tomorrow in our space, Wonder Space. It's not Wonder Space, it's our workshop, but it's Dream Space. So we'll be demonstrating that in our Dream Space. Yes, ma'am. Currently, we're designing it to be free. So the hub is designed to be in place sometime in January or February. We're already starting to work on collecting assets for the portal. If anyone's interested in collaborating in the development of those assets and getting them in one location that people can get to easily. It also helps us to kind of collect and solidify some of the research. I know Sean was talking about that in different books and things I've been reading. Some of the research is still a little scattered because of how young we are in the development of this. Yes, ma'am. How important is it? Well, I think a lot of there's a lot of support to show that English language as a second language is actually enhanced in gameplay. That is not our position at all. As a matter of fact, we're working on developing a game where the students are creating their own language. Creating their own language by looking at looking for patterns, and then looking at those patterns, we're anticipating that they'll recognize the patterns in their own language, and thereby start to get an understanding of that. My field is physics. And a lot of times students will come in and will use adjectives a lot, like there's a normal force, there's a frictional force, etc. Those adjectives are defining a force, but yet the kids are memorizing 4 different forces because they don't understand the function of an adjective. And so one of the things that we're looking at is how can we utilize game and play in the sense of creating language so that we have the students in fact understanding what these patterns are doing. So for example, instead of talking about prepositions, looking at you need to relate one noun to another noun, how can that be done? Different languages do that in different ways. English happens to use prepositions. And so that then gives a reason for the preposition other than just a memorization of this is a preposition, this is an adverb, this is an adjective. And I apologize for the mistakes in the PowerPoint. This was done pretty quickly. So. Any other comment or question? They'll be available later this fall. I have little cards that if you're interested, come by and pick them up. We'll also have them at the workshop tomorrow. Yeah, so it's got an email address and website. Okay, yes? That structure hasn't been completely worked out, but we have been talking about intellectual property, and we at the school have been talking about intellectual property because, as you know, at universities they have intellectual property issues, and as we start to get teachers who are creating more and more things, the intellectual property issues start to become a bigger thing to consider. And then also, if you have students who start to create things, that at our school that we're, Ted's with me in the school as well, that we're working at, we have students who create content as a part of their assessment. And so for their standards, they have to create something that demonstrates that they have achieved that particular standard. Some of the kids create pretty good things that we want to use. And so then we end up with, it was done because of an assignment that we assigned, who has that, we're going to ask permission from the student. So all of those things are emerging issues that I think are going to be very, very real. So at this current time, we're keeping track of who has what, and depending on how things go, and that is yet to be developed. So we're currently working under common standard practices. I think my time is up. I'll be here afterward if you want to talk. Ted Wakeman and I will be doing a presentation tomorrow morning. And so thank you for your time.